Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining and welcome to this Product People event. Before we start, a quick reminder, our events are streamed on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. All talks are going to be recorded and saved to YouTube so you can check them out at any session that you might have missed, and you have the perk of joining live with us today. And that gives you the ability to share your thoughts and your insights and questions through Slido. So today's session is about when product meets marketing, turning cross-team tension into revenue, and it will be presented to us by Ekaterina who is a marketing and growth advisor in B2C startups and scale-ups. Very exciting. Before I hand everything over to Ekaterina, let me briefly introduce myself and also Product People. So my name is Noelle. I'm an associate product management consultant at Product People, and I'm your host today. I have a background in lending operations and lending systems management. I've also worked with startups, large corporations, and gained experience in different domains from nonprofit to fintech and other heavily regulated industries. So for those who don't know us, Product People provides interim product management and product leadership through our 40 product managers. We also run one of the largest PM communities in Europe with more than 60,000 members. So before I hand this over to our speaker, we really would love to hear from you. So please go to our Slido link and answer this question. So what is the biggest challenge when product and marketing work together? A, different priorities and goals, communication and alignment, timing and planning launches, or measuring shared success. So I'm going to give everybody a couple seconds here to answer, and then I can go over what we see. And I think this is a good start to get our brains working for this awesome presentation and a good thing to maybe get us all on the topic. So we do have our results in, and it looks like we're all really on the same page. We have 80% of people are replying saying measuring shared success. So without further ado, now that we know we're all thinking this way, I'm happy to welcome Ekaterina Gemsreigler. Ekaterina drives growth for B2C products across product and marketing. She has various roles in growth marketing, CRM, and product management, and learned ins and out of product-led marketing-led growth strategies. So thank you for joining us today. We're excited to hear your approach to how product meets marketing.
Yeah, hello everyone, and I'm very excited to be here. And I think it's good that I have a few slides on approaching this problem on measuring the shared success across teams. So I'm also gonna, without further ado, start presenting because I have a lot of slides with many different examples. And today I plan to talk about why different parts of the funnels do not really work in isolation and how they impact each other. I'll share a few nightmares and a few success stories about how the teams could work together and what it can result in. And ultimately, I will also share my advice that I have learned over all these years of trying to bring these typically two siloed teams together. A few words about myself, apart from what has already been said. I've been working in marketing and growth for more than 15 years, and the last decade I've spent mostly working with mobile apps. But currently I'm an independent growth consultant. And yeah, as mentioned, I specialize in end-to-end and full funnel growth, being able to approach all the parts of the funnel and see what the bottlenecks are, whether they are on the side of bad creatives or the wrong targeting, so distribution, or whether it lies on revenue conversion and retention problems. So this is typically how the funnel looks. I don't know how many of you work with mobile apps and how many work on B2B or B2C digital products, but this is a typical funnel for a mobile app, which starts with an ad impression or a visit to the store listing and ends with renewal. And you can see that in between, there are various paths that the user can take. So there are purchases that can be happening directly or through trials. There are grace periods or not. It's also important to see like what are the success rates for the billing retries, for example. So the funnel itself is pretty straightforward. But what in my experience is not straightforward is the split of responsibilities and the shared ownership of the funnel. So again, depending on the size of the company, depending on the maturity stage of the product, you can see that there are different teams that are responsible for different parts of the funnel. The marketing's responsibility can end with maybe the CPI, cost per install, or maybe they will end with the cost per landing page view, or maybe they will end with the cost per sign up. Then there is the section which the product growth team typically manages, which has to do with how we monetize the users either right away or later. Then there is also this huge part of the product, which is the core product experience, which also usually a separate team manages. It can be a learning experience, it can be content consumption, it can be anything that has to do with users getting the value of the product long term, which is managed by another team. And sometimes these responsibilities and ownerships are simply not very clear or straightforward. So now I will talk and share different examples of how acquisition, activation, retention, and conversion impact ultimately revenue growth, starting with activation. The two main goals of activation and onboarding are typically to prepare users to experience value, or if possible, if the product allows that, to already reach the aha moment and to experience value right away. And another goal from my perspective is to also convince the users before they see the paywall and before they see the price, like before this pretty painful high friction moment, to convince the users of the value and address the barriers that they might have. So if we speak about the first main goal about users getting the value during the activation stage, I think it's important to mention that if they do, if they manage to, if they get to the value during the first experience, they are more likely to come back. So the retention curve typically goes down very sharply, and we know that the retention on day 1 or day 7 drops quite significantly. So by making sure that more users at the beginning, during onboarding or the activation stage, can experience value, you can shift the whole curve higher up. And this is where a lot of retention wins lie. So the retention is not that much about necessarily changing the core user experience, even though it, of course, can be very useful too. But there are usually a lot of tactics that can be applied to activation, to the first experience, which also help to improve retention. On another hand, as mentioned before, activation also is critical for improving the conversion rates to purchase and increasing lifetime values. In mobile apps, it is especially true because the paid offer at the end of the onboarding is typically the most important source of revenue, like the most important revenue driver. The reason behind it is that different apps, depending on the vertical, if we talk about the vertical which are aimed like at personal improvement, we see that the user's motivation is the highest at the very beginning. So educational apps or health and fitness apps typically use the paywall, like the soft paywall or the hard paywall, right in onboarding before users experience the value. And this is where most of the people will opt in for trial or make a purchase. If at the same time, activation as it impacts retention, it gives you more touch points for upselling later. So if users keep coming back to your product, it means you can always offer them a discount, or maybe even without a discount, there is still a chance that you can sell something to them. And the last point is that when users recognize the value early on, they're also more willing to pay a higher price, which results in higher lifetime value. A few examples of how this can work. Seemingly a change in the onboarding flow, like for example, in this case, it's the way, it's how the user selects the learning path. This is from my past experience at Mimo, where one version was about telling the user which paths we have available and describing them. And another option would be asking them questions about what they actually are passionate about and what they want to learn. So this version with the 3 questions performed better back in the days. And the thing is that it helped improve not only the activation, like first chapter completion, not only retention, but also the trial opt-in rate. So this is, I would say, is a perfect example of how a change in onboarding can significantly impact the rest of the funnel as well. It's worth noting that value can take many different shapes and forms, and it's not always about removing as many screens as possible from the experience. Sometimes it's about adding the extra screens as long as they bring the user closer to the realization that this is the right product for them. For example, you might be familiar with such reassuring onboardings. A lot of apps use them. I think Headway was the app which pioneered this approach, where after different questions, the users get the reassurance that they're actually in the right place and this is the right product for them. Again, a change in onboarding and even adding extra screens can still help you improve monetization. Like, for example, it helped us improve the trial opt-in rate back in the days as well. And this is an example from a friend of mine and also an industry thought leader, Jacob Rushfin, where also adding an extra screen with a question of whether users are actually going to planning to fall asleep now, whether they need a sleep cast or a different type of meditation, also helped improve the activation rate. So again, it's not about removing the screens necessarily, but it's about making sure that users get to the value and at least feel it. Now let's talk about retention a little bit and how this can impact growth. As already mentioned, activation and retention together, speaking of the free users, create more touch points for upselling your product later. So if you maybe do not sell anything in onboarding already, or you do, this still gives you a chance to monetize this long tail of users who keep coming back to your product. If we're talking about already paying customers, of course, the more they use the product and the more they come back, the longer is their lifetime, which also means they stay subscribed and generate higher lifetime value. And another, maybe not so evident point is that as long as users love the product and stay retained, they can also keep sharing the word of mouth and referrals, which are more likely to be positive if they keep using the product. Retention, this is going to be a very small case study about how retention can impact conversion. So in 2024, I worked with an app which is designed is a food scanner detecting the ultra-processed food. And the problem was that the user retention and conversion rates were pretty low. At the same time, the scanner as the feature was very successful and the activation rate was very high. The problem ultimately was that while it was a great activation driver, still with this only feature, it was quite difficult to monetize, and not everybody was willing to pay for it because there are a lot of free alternatives out there. So the solution that we found after working for a few months on a lot of user research, on talking to people, on with the team, we spent quite a lot of time on researching what are the people that are already getting the value out of the product, as well as doing a lot of research asking people who have not heard about the product yet. So this, based on this, we made the decision to pivot to a newly discovered segment, which was getting the most value out of the product back then. These were users with diabetes. So based on this, we redesigned the whole offer of the product, the positioning way, and the acquisition strategy also had to change because this would mean different creatives, different designs, different types of UGC, etc. And together with all of these changes that are impacting mostly the distribution, the team also had to come up with some feature which would be driving retention, because ultimately without a new feature that is super relevant for this new segment that we wanted to address, it was nothing would have changed because just the scanner was impossible to monetize. So this is when the new feature was born. It was the meal tracker. And again, based on this, we redesigned, the team redesigned the onboarding, making sure that they communicate the new USP, address the jobs to be done, and everything had to be very aligned from the first ad impression to the first user experience in the product. The team also experimented a lot with the paywalls, not only with the layout or the placement, but also with the pricing, because again, with a different target audience and with a new feature, they could start charging more and experimenting if users are willing to pay more with the freemium setup, and also with the layouts and the copy on the paywalls. As a result, the results were very impressive, even though it took some time to make sure that the new feature gets adopted. So it did not happen overnight. It was a lot of hard work, also definitely put by the team. The CPIs increased in the short term because we were targeting a more narrow segment, but at the same time, the average revenue per user grew 5 times. The retention improved. The conversion rate from install to paid also increased. And ultimately, the team could start scaling again. So they could profitably, at positive return, scale their paid advertising budgets 6 times, which is very impressive. So it again means that we, by completely redefining the core value of the product, we managed to impact the way the way it monetizes and how successfully it brings revenue. One of the things that is relevant here, which also is not usually the first thought when such changes are happening, is that by improving monetization after everything was changed, a lot of things changed on the product side, you start getting more of the high quality signals that you typically need for ad networks like Meta ads or Google ads or TikTok. So everything with the algorithm that can optimize towards based on a specific event can benefit from a much higher quantity of such signals. So we also could switch the optimization of the campaigns from to trials, which was a much better signal than compared to what has been used before. And this time it succeeded because there were enough signals ultimately to send to Meta ads. Another example of how the improving retention can also impact the whole funnel and ultimately revenue is localization as a feature. So back in the days at Mimo, we were not sure for a few years if this is something we want to add. But at the same time, we wanted to remove this extra barrier that existed, which was language, which was very often addressed by users. And you can read a few examples of the user reviews that we were receiving every day. So by adding more languages to the app and translating all the content, we also managed to improve the 7 retention. People started inviting their friends more. We managed to improve the trial opt-in rate. In some markets, it doubled. And also we started getting fewer negative reviews with 1-star ratings, and which ultimately helped us improve the install rate as well. The less the adoption of English in the market, the better results we saw. This was the bottom line. Another aspect which also hugely impacts user retention and activation, as well as the visibility and the impact on marketing and acquisition, is the quality of the product and user experience. By this, I mean that the crash rates and ARRs in mobile apps, for example, on Google Play a critical role in search visibility. So on the graph, you can see how much the visibility declined after a week or so, a few weeks of having pretty unstable and very high, like above the baseline crash rates. At the same time, on this graph, you can see how much the search visibility improved and grew once the crash rates stabilized, and we also reached the threshold for the 4-star rating. So this is when Google Play typically gives a boost in visibility because the app is perceived as more quality. Now, the last section here is conversion, which of course has probably the highest impact on revenue, right? Because the changes to the user experience, like the way users go through the conversion funnel from install to purchase or renewal, typically have the highest impact. And here, one important thing that I want to highlight is that when we are on the mission to decrease customer acquisition cost, or maybe we're on a mission to increase LTV, or maybe we want to do both at the same time, we usually want to fix every bottleneck that is in there. For example, we know that the trial opt-in rate for our product is way below the benchmarks, or maybe we also hear and see it in users' behavior that they're very hesitant to start the trial. It can be somewhere else, right? Maybe they start the trial but immediately cancel, or then they don't see the value and cancel it in 7 days before, like in 5-6 days before the trial expires. The instinct is to fix each and every of this, which is technically right, but what is important is to start with the problem and not the solutions. And what I mean here is to first truly get to the actual problem. The numbers always show us the problem. They show us the bottlenecks that we can usually see, but they don't necessarily tell us the why. And the why, from my perspective, most of the times is the best way to figure it out is through conversations with users. For example, if the trial opt-in rate is low, chances are the paywall impression rate is not high enough. meaning the paywall is somewhere so far away from the first user experience and very few people reach it. This can be the case. The case can be that users do not necessarily understand on the paywall, on the trial screen, what exactly they are paying for. What is the difference between the free version and the paid version? They maybe by going through the onboarding have not really get a good idea of your product being a good choice for them and the right choice for them. So what is likely to work is research on this and making sure that you understand why the people are currently not opting in for it at this very moment, versus, for example, decreasing the price without research, or changing the designs and the layout to the level that it starts bringing diminishing returns, but designs might not be addressing the main problem and the main barrier that the users have at the moment. Or also changing anything else while not fixing the paywall impression rate. Same with similar logic with the trial to purchase rate. If it's low, it's also important to understand the why behind it and to start asking users if they got the value out of it, and to start understanding where your promise of the value to them broke. And with this, you can typically act because maybe your target audience is very young, or maybe it's mostly based in Latin America markets, and the involuntary churn is very high because there might not be enough funds on the cards, right? Maybe it's because they really did not get the value out of your product, or they don't even understand what it is and what they need to pay for. So these are the reasons that can also help guide you to the right solution. Indulging in revenue grabbing and trying to get as much money as possible using some gray hat tactics. For example, promising to send the trial expiration reminder, but not doing this. In fact, this is not the ideal solutions from my experience. And here on the screen, I'm trying to show the amount of different tactics and different types of layouts and changes that you can make to the paywall. But again, the critical point here is to start with the problem, and then you can see, based on this screen, how many different solutions actually exist for addressing it. This is one of the nightmare stories from many years ago, when I just joined Nemo back then. And I remember that everything was running pretty smoothly. Our paid acquisition was bringing stable returns. But then after 1 week, I noticed that our customer acquisition cost has significantly increased. Our cost per trial has increased. And after a bit of investigation, it turned out that the product team decided to remove one of the bully points from this paywall. On the left, you see that there were 4 bully points initially, and then there were 3. So nobody actually thought that it would have any effect on the trial opt-in rates, but it did. And the trial opt-in rates dropped by 30%, which is a crazy amount. So we started getting way fewer trial started events, which made the optimization for these events difficult. So we saw a huge drop in the paid campaigns performance. We saw a drop in organic revenue. And it took us weeks to restore the performance of this paid advertising loop. So this is another one where we were testing a lower price together with adding the free trial not only to the monthly plans where we had them already, not only having them in the yearly plans where they already were present, but also adding them to the monthly plans. At the same time, after looking at the results, we saw that we started getting way fewer trial events than before. And this was absolutely truly hard to understand why, because with a lower price and trials being there available on both products, it's really hard to explain why suddenly the total amount would have dropped, because there were also no changes on the acquisition side at this point. It turned out that together with this change, another team also decided to move the paywall way further down in onboarding. So to actually see the paywall, you had to do a set of exercises, which would take a lot of time and effort. Not everybody could do them on the go, on the mobile phone as well. So this was the reason why a much better offer still got way less visibility than it should have, leading to an ultimately a drop in conversions. So only after this was fixed, we could see the actual results. This happened like after this green scene here. At the same time, it might sound like I'm complaining a lot about the product teams who make these changes and do not tell you on time, or maybe there is no such thing as stakeholder management, etc. But it's not really the case. These were just a few nightmares through which I lived, and which I think are happening very often. But marketing and acquisition also play a huge role in making sure that the whole funnel works. For example, if you want to manipulate certain metrics, like if, for example, the goal of the marketing team, for whatever reason, is the number of installs or CPIs, it's very easy to manipulate by driving low-quality traffic via cheap ad networks. If you also want to get a boost in purchases or revenue short term, you can also drive customers by offering discounts pretty aggressively, right? However, this has a lot of consequences, typically bad ones, down the line, because by doing this, you get users with low level of intent, and even if they make an emotional purchase, they might still not have enough motivation to reach their goals, so they give up. And what you usually see is the high subscriber churn later on, as well as bad user reviews, low quality of your community, and poor referrals. This is an example of what can happen during seasonality when we scale the campaigns, and it makes sense in the moment. It can also make sense long term, but it's important to still be very mindful of these effects. So if we start scaling, going to more diverse sets of channels, we have a different channel mix. We also want to grab the revenue during some high seasonality peaks, and we do offer a lot of discounts. We end up with purchases that are actually accidental in nature. And what happens typically is the subscriber churn which catches up on this on the first very successful months in this growth in new subscribers and new customers. Then you can see that the churn also catches up in the months after, or like typically 3 to 4 weeks after, because it's also very typical for shorter term plans like weekly or monthly, when people are just trying out the product. So yeah, every subscriber is different, is created different, and not everybody is necessarily going to be very committed in the long run. Also, the quality of the users that you get into the app or drive into your landing pages even depends on the advertising concepts that you're using, because there are concepts which drive clicks, which make you stop from scrolling, which definitely grab attention. At the same time, there are concepts which work throughout the full funnel and also have an impact on lifetime values and customer acquisition cost. Here are the examples of the concepts which, in my experience, work the best throughout the full funnel. So these are the problem solution ones, where the problem in the hook resonates with the target audience. It's the progress journal and the street interview. These are the concepts which show, which either resonate with the audience or have a lot of credibility in them, which drives pretty high quality users. And now, after I talked about how different teams can absolutely without any evil intent ruin the metrics of others or slightly negatively impact the funnel, what I will left with is like some advice on that I can share on how to make sure that you're aligned and can drive full funnel growth. So the first advice is to try to get as much understanding and context from the other team. It can often happen that everybody has a lot of ideas, and ideally they have to be shared and documented and available to everyone publicly, then prioritized and worked on. But sometimes in the moment, people just get annoyed when you come and start sharing different things on what needs to be done differently, and ideas for improvements, right? Understanding the context in which every team lives and what they already have on their roadmap is critical for being friends and for making sure you understand what every team is already working on. It's important to also have the goals for the quarter, where teams understand why a metric, like what exactly needs to be worked on. So as long as these priorities are clear, then it makes also everything much easier. Some tactical solutions for this could be putting some rituals in place, which can be syncing on goals, which can be weekly or bi-weekly metric reviews when you go through the full funnel and see what changed and why. In the meantime, what's critical is sharing the announcements of the results of different experiments that have been running so far and how what worked. I think making this company-wide is very important to keep everyone in the loop. And also the upcoming changes, where a product can flag the what's going to be changing or tested in the next few weeks, which can in some way impact the funnel. And marketing also can flag the upcoming tests and campaigns. And then both teams can also, with all this information, align on what should maybe get postponed to not see poor results in the end. Defaulting to transparency is the important value, which also helps to make sure that all the teams are on the same page. Here you can see an example of the database with the experiments. They can cover the funnel, the product. They can cover every ad concept that is being tested. They can cover different experiments for search engine optimization or app store optimization. So documenting the results and sharing them publicly definitely helps to avoid a lot of speculation. Because it also helps to filter through different ideas. If something has been tested and has not worked, you always have a documented version of how exactly it was tested, because sometimes it might not be about the idea, but about the wrong execution. And then you can also make an informed decision about whether it's worth giving it another shot. There are definitely parts where both teams and the whole company actually as well needs to agree on. It's the definition of your ideal customer profile. Why does your product exist? So the jobs to be done. How do you talk about it in the product and also on the marketing side? When it comes to activation, it's important to define what activated means, and what is good and bad activation, and what is good and bad traffic, because it's also very easy in the moment to end up in the debates that, no, this is the bad product experience. No, this is the wrong traffic that you sent to us. And so to avoid this, it's also important to have some baseline in place, definition of churn and the root causes for churn, and also the different benchmarks per platform and market, where you can also clearly set like the goals for the quarter and say that in order to reach our goals, this is how different metrics are supposed to stay or grow to contribute. Because otherwise, you might end up with the assumption that higher marketing budgets are going to fix all the problems, which they won't if the conversion rates in the funnel doesn't hold at scale. One alternative solution for this, which I personally like, is cross-functional teams and working on growth loops rather than parts of the funnel. So if we don't have a good solution for breaking down the silos, and every team still ends up being responsible for acquisition or retention or activation or conversion rates, it could make sense to form cross-functional teams where the team is responsible for dedicated growth loops. It can be paid advertising loop or maybe a viral loop, but this way the whole team is working towards the same goal. So to sum it up, I believe the reality that many of us live in is when we try to scale, the conversion drops, and we end up spending weeks trying to figure out if it's the wrong creative, so the wrong audience, or the wrong everything, or the bug in the activation rate or on the paywall. What we can very easily get to is when we have the shared dashboards, we default to transparency. We share everything in as much as advance as possible when it comes to the upcoming experiments. And by looking at the same dashboards, we also can spot the problem much sooner. But ideally, yes, as I said, aligning on everything in advance and sharing the upcoming scaling and experimentation plans on both parts of the product acquisition as well as activation, retention, conversion, with both teams proactively flagging when something is running and how it's working and what's planned to happen after. So this way, you can truly align way in advance on what needs to change in your roadmaps or nothing at all. At least everybody's informed. So this was it from my end, and I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina, and thank you everyone for listening. We're going to start our Q&A session now. So please head over to Slido and submit any questions you have for Ekaterina. And while you draft those questions, I'm going to share a few more slides about product people. So we are typically invited to join teams as interim product managers or product leaders, as product coaches or consultants to upskill product management or operation teams, and to accelerate transformation in the teams. So here are a few of our wonderful clients that we've been able to work with before. And finally, we're going to just go over a few stats about our company. So we've supported over 690 teams. There are 40 product leaders and product managers in our team, and I'm proud to say that both our team and leadership are around 60% female run. So I do see that we already have some questions here. So what do you think is the biggest misconception product and marketing teams have about each other's role?
Biggest misconception? I think that's exactly the one that I'm trying to address with my work, is the thinking that your work or your impact ends at a certain KPI without instead realizing that your work can have a huge impact on the full funnel. So if you're working on creatives and you are the one leading the creative production machine, this will have like a huge impact not only on CPIs or cost per click, but also on the customer acquisition cost. So not addressing it or thinking about it this way can backfire. And it's the same with the product team, which can believe that their work starts with like as soon as the user maybe finished the onboarding, or and typically like I think it's about not thinking about all the second and second order effects of the changes that are made. Because as I showed, like once very similarly simple change of removing one bullet point from the paywall can have such a huge impact on the work of the acquisition and the distribution team above at the top of the funnel. It's just crazy. Yeah.
So interesting. Great answer. And we have some more here. So what are some early warning signs that product and marketing are becoming misaligned? That's a great one.
Yeah, it's a great one. I would say maybe the amount of time that you spend finger pointing. It's not always finger pointing and it's not always complaining, but if there is a meeting where by looking at numbers, both teams start saying like, no, it definitely cannot be us. No, it's probably on your end. Did you actually check this and that? I think the amount of time spent in these discussions is one of the warning signs, because ideally everybody by coming to a meeting, if it's happening, should already have a very clear idea of what happened or what changed and what can be the reason behind it, like behind the drop or increase in specific metrics. I think the amount of time that gets wasted on trying to figure it out pretty much in the moment instead of already foreseeing what might happen before.
That makes a lot of sense. And these all are really good building on each other. So this one here we have, how do you create a culture where product and marketing challenge each other constructively rather than operate in silos?
Yeah, I think to do it constructively, there are a few principles to stick to. First is to make sure you're looking at the same data, which has the same source. So that again, there is like the terms are understood, the abbreviations that you are using are understood by everyone, how things get measured. Is it on a cohort basis? Is it on a non-cohort basis? Like this is very critical to make sure you are talking about the same things. After this, when you're looking at numbers like week over week or month over month, I think it also leaves little room for speculation. It becomes quite clear where the bottlenecks might appear. And another big principle is user research, because even if the numbers, again, don't give us the answer, users typically can have very short feedback loops. If you are working in B2C, maybe your support team started getting a lot of negative feedback when some feature changed. Maybe you started getting a lot of negative reviews. So taking the quantitative data with you and leaves less room for speculation. And also, I think it's important to be coming with assumption that nobody comes to work on a certain day with the goal of doing a bad work. And that's why I think like this level of respect for each other's expertise is also critical.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and makes me think to those rituals you talked about bringing in, which is really good. And how do you handle situations where product priorities and marketing opportunities are not aligning?
Yeah, I think that's something that usually needs to be addressed. They should be aligning. Maybe the way it's been working for me in the past years is to start defining the goals and priorities from the top, meaning there are certain company goals that we want to reach during this year, which can be broken down into quarters. And once there are company goals, From there, it's very easy to derive the goals that help achieve this level of growth that the company is aiming to, and break it down by team, whether it's functional or cross-functional. Basically, the idea is that both should be moving the company and the business forward. And based on their expertise, I think there should be no conflict, like in the ideal world.
And then we have a follow-up question from your answer to question 3, which was how do you create a culture where product and marketing challenge each other rather than operate in silos, challenge each other constructively. And they wanted to know, what successful practical tactics have you used to break down the silos between marketing and product so they become a more unified team?
I would say, again, the most successful approach from my experience is to have the company structure that is willing to maybe at least give it a try and to work as cross-functional teams. It can be called squads or pods or whatever, but in some sense, not just having the functional silos, product marketing, but a cross-functional team that gets to be responsible for one closed loop, growth loop. I think this is one of the best, most successful ways to at least to give this approach a shot. To have a team of experts, each of whom is an expert in their own field, but they're working together in order to solve a specific problem, which typically brings more revenue and moves the business forward. I think this is the best way to address that.
So interesting, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise with us, and also to our audience for providing such great questions and listening. And if you'd like to stay connected, we'd really love to have you subscribe to our newsletter. You can scan this QR code here. And we are also hiring at the moment, so please feel free to follow up on that. And then if you enjoyed this talk today, please join us again on June 16th, and we will be talking about a tactical roadmap as an alternative to your no with Stephen Van Roden. And so thank you so much for joining, and see you all next time.